What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about a resource for building up your family's liturgical prayer life. This is the St. Dunstan's Plainsong Psalter. It's published by Lancelot Andrews Press. Lancelot Andrews Press is not a sponsor of this video, but if you happen to know someone who works for the publisher, who wants to hook a lay theologian Catholic dad out, who wants to help other people out, I'd be happy to provide some discount codes and would definitely love discounted book publishing prices. Would love discounted book publishing prices sent my way as well. This book is one of many wonderful resources that they do provide. They're well printed, they're nicely bound, they're generally affordable. And other books on their website to check out are things like the Monastic Diurnal, which I don't personally have a copy of, but I've seen as really a wonderful addition on people's shelves. And there's lots of other devotional and catechetical material that they have. Very well designed, well published, incredibly useful. One of the books that they have reprinted that at some point I'd love to review on this channel is J.M. Neal's commentary on the Psalter. I had access to an old reference copy of that in the library at my seminary when I was in formation, and it is an incredible book. It was one of the original versions that I've seen, and what I've seen online of their new reprint, it's absolutely beautiful, and they did an incredible job of doing it. I don't have that, so again, that's just like a bonus to check it out. Put a link in the description for them below as well. Again, I don't get any money for you to go there. I just think they're really great books, and I would encourage you to check them out if you're looking for this kind of thing to add to your library. Now, full disclosure, this is an Antioch and Western Rite Orthodox publishing house. And there's nothing in the books themselves that are contrary to the Catholic faith, but if you're the kind of person that likes to pray or consult spiritual texts that have an imprimatur, I get it, but that's not what you're going to find here, obviously. So, what is this book? Well, primarily, it's what it says on the tin. It's a pointed, and I mean square notes, Plainsong notation Psalter in traditional English. It's mostly the Coverdale Psalter used in the 1928 Book of Common Prayer, which was, of course, in turn an update to the original Coverdale Psalter that was used in 1662, and all of the ensuing translations. And basically, this is interesting for 5 of you that aren't future me looking back at this video. What's up, Michael? Good to see you again. But really, here's the deal. This is a faithful, beautiful translation of all 150 Psalms. I'll get more to that in a second, but why, would you maybe ask me wisely, why do you want a Psalter that's not in like a Bible, right? Well, I'm glad you asked, Dennis. One of the reasons that I would say this is, if you ever find yourself singing the Psalms in a chapel stall somewhere in the glorious corner of Christendom, where you could actually find yourself in a chapel stall singing the Psalms, you would really enjoy and find it convenient to have a Psalter that was pointed with the notation that's being used in that, assume, religious house or seminary or church, Lord willing. It would be very, very helpful to have that. Likewise, if you want to build this kind of liturgical sensibility, the sacramental imagination into the life of your family, resources like this are deeply valuable. Now, of course, I'm not a music teacher. This channel isn't about learning music. Music is an important part of my family's life. It's really deeply part of the apostolate of our family, sharing and growing in beauty. But I'm not going to really get into teaching you how to do this. I have a lot of resources for that below. There's a ton out there. You can find a couple of suggestions I'll have for you. We'll get into in a minute. But really, it's important to know that the Psalms are the Bible's hymn book. They have been the mainstay of Christian worship since the first days of our being Christians in the temple together before the temple's destruction. This is an inheritance, of course, from Jewish antiquity, and I'm going to have a whole other video series on praying and meditating and growing with the Psalms, so more on that later. But really, it's just important to kind of remember that grouping the Psalms together and building a liturgical prayer life around groups of Psalms is not really a novel thing. It's like the oldest school thing you can do, and we've been doing it for a very long time. So if you're looking for ways to incorporate like scripture and song maybe and sacred moments into the rhythm of your family's DNA in general, I would really like to encourage you to carve out some time to pray and sing together as a family, right? That's a priority that you can do. And there's really no other place, no better resource for that than your Bible's hymnal, which is the Psalms. But you don't have to figure out how to do that by yourself, because that's been done before, right? We're the church. We've got 2,000 years of practice, and then, all of the things that the shoulders of giants we stand on through the Old Testament, right? One of the best ways to do all of this is to find a way to utilize what is known as the divine office. Again, I'll have a whole other series on what that means. We've mentioned it in other videos that I've done here in the past. But the divine office is the public prayer of the church, sometimes called the Breviary or Breviary, if you like to say all the vowels. Also, it's the modern office is called the Liturgy of the Hours in the Roman Rite, usually. There's a lot of ways you can do it. Lots of resources for how to get into this. Obviously, you could do something like subscribe to Word on Fire's Liturgy of the Hour booklets. It's a monthly subscription that they'll mail into your house, and you can go through the morning and evening prayer with them on that. You could perhaps buy and learn to use the Modern Office's full, the 4 volumes in America, or the 3 in the UK. Just the morning office, learn to pray that Catholic office. You could also pick up a traditional breviary or use something online, and there's lots of ways to do that. You could dig into an Eastern Catholic liturgical prayer book or source, and there's 1,001 other options with the ways you could do this. I'm going to suggest an option that I'm particularly biased towards, and I want to encourage as many families as possible to pick up. Now, as a former Anglican, I have been deeply shaped by the beauty and simplicity of the Anglican Book of Common Prayer, and that especially the daily office, that morning and evening prayer, matins and evensong. And when I came into the church, when I became Catholic, I left behind a lot of beautiful and holy things that God used to make me Catholic, to form me in my spirituality, and to help me learn and give me a Catholic imagination and understand how to live this life in a really full and robust way. And one of the hardest things for me to leave behind was the traditional Anglican English office. And there's a number of reasons for that. I have another video on using this office and how this works, and if you want more of this history, I can definitely do a video on that as well, because it's a huge part of my nerdy background. But really the upshot of all of this, and the reason this even matters for us today, is that when Pope Benedict XVI, under his pastoral leadership, he created a pathway for people who were Anglicans, corporate communities, religious houses, churches, dioceses, whatever, to come into full communion with the church, maintaining a significant portion of their cultural, spiritual identity in the way that they worship together, and in what he called the Personal Ordinariates for former Anglicans. Again, this is a whole other video. Other resources out there on the Ordinariates. But with regard to the office, this was brought in as a very important part of that, because it's kind of the center of what is known as like Anglican or English patrimony for the church. And there's 2 versions that are official today for use in the Catholic Church, which were brought back in, bringing these things back into the mainstream of the church. There's one out of the North American Chancery, and then there's another one for the UK, for both the UK and other Commonwealth countries except Canada. Sorry, guys. I'm not ordained, so I don't have any obligation to pray any specific office, but being free to choose, I pray the UK edition for a number of reasons, which again, I'm not going to get into here. It's really an absolutely wonderful book. It's well made, it's well printed. It's published, that office, the UK, the Commonwealth edition, is published by CTS out of the UK. And as of this video's recording, given the crazy insanity of the global economy right now, it's a relatively decent time to pick up a book. I'll include a link to it in the description box below. Okay, anyway, that's a lot of preamble. Important though, because for today's book, the St. Dunstan's Plainsong Psalter was written to really build on the work of a man named Canon Winfrid Douglas. He was a prolific writer and a musician who, his work is absolutely wonderful, and it's really, it fits the mission of what we do here as a family, and raising up a family in the beauty of holiness, and what we're trying to do here at Embrings B, and share that. The 3rd printing was revised in 2006, and it includes a number of really wonderful things, as you can check out here in the table of contents. Obviously it has what you'd expect, the Psalms, but it also has a number of helpful things, resources on singing, as I was mentioning before. Not a music teacher, but this is about singing the Word of God. So it has information on singing, or what we should really say is chanting and elevated speech, the Psalms and the offices in general, advice for how to chant scriptural lessons in public. I'm really grateful for the pointing of the various parts of morning and evening prayer, and the fact that they included customary rubrics and traditional liturgical use of the offices. One, because that's the sort of thing I'm interested in. I find a lot of intellectual and spiritual benefit from researching these things and learning how this stuff is practiced. It I dig it. But I'm weird, I realize that. For people who aren't quite as into that sort of thing as I am, it's also really helpful just to see that there is a context, and while there's not, there's a context for how to do this in a way that's good. And there's also a way to kind of bring that down to look at how families might be able to do that as well. So for those of us like me who were top of the candle high church Anglo-Catholics, there's a liturgical principle that in all the things that we do, they should be done as beautifully as possible, right? In terms of the liturgical or spiritual life. So for example, as Catholics, and as I did as an Anglo-Catholic even, we believe that the Mass is the perpetual representation of the sacrifice of Christ, where God himself offers himself on our behalf, and we faithful are brought into that thinly veiled brink of the throne of heaven, right? We can glimpse in our hearts the glory of that eternal day. And this is what we believe happens in Mass, right? All the sacraments come from and lead back to the Eucharist because we believe it to be Christ himself. And if you believe this, we should show it. That's why I have never lost, and I hope never to lose, my sense that every Mass should be treated with as much dignity and reverence as possible. And it's the same whether, it's an army Mass on the Jeep, World War II, right? Of a bombed out, battlefield, and you're in the back of a Jeep, and there's no incense, and there's not even a server, and no real vestments. And in a Gothic cathedral, the Mass itself is the same, right? But our goal, our aim is for the most glorious setting possible, not the most comfortable. And this idea of not choosing comfort but choosing greatness is a very important principle in living the devout life in the way that I feel is the best and most robust and God-honoring way that we can do that. Again, you get my take on this. If you disagree, you can let me know in the comments below, and I hope you do. But this really was the Anglo-Catholic principle that I brought with me when I came back into the church, and when God brought us home, right? And as I strive to find new ways to lead my family in this life of faith, that's what I want to use resources like this to help me pray and sing to the glory of God and to teach them the beauty of that way of life. I've got a little booklet that I made available for building a family rule of life. I'll provide a link to that in the box below as well. You don't have to use that resource, but I want to be as helpful as possible for busy families looking for ways to think critically about their spiritual goals. Now, with the rule of life, you need to revisit that, right? As seasons change, and we've adjusted ours as a family. Our evening prayers together used to be singing a full evensong together, and that's changed over time, right? As our family grew, as needs change, we make those adjustments, right? But you just need to constantly be revisiting that as you're trying to build that. That's a free tip for you today. I'm gonna have a whole nother video where I talk about how to pray the English daily office with some guidance on doing that with a family, because it's something I'm very passionate about and I think that it's really important. But today I want to introduce this book primarily as an introduction into that way of thinking, and I want to talk about how this is a useful resource for this project that we're on. Even if you're not into all of the liturgical nerdery that I'm into, there are some really important spiritual principles here. So a couple of reflections I want to give you on the Psalter in particular. First and foremost, obviously this is not a novel concept to this book. It's really a part of the Anglican system, but as you're looking through the book and you're looking through the Psalter itself, notice that the Psalms are grouped in order, day by day, right? Morning and evening prayer from 1 to 30. Again, this is part of the beauty and simplicity of the Anglican Book of Common Prayer, and why it's a very effective way, and one of the most unique things in the light of other English offices today is that you get to read all 150 Psalms every month. Multiple times a year you're reading all 150 Psalms. So really the way that works then is from the first day of the month to the last, there are Psalms set so that the full Psalter is prayed over the course of the year many times. When you hit a month that has 31 days, obviously you just repeat day 30. So to keep things simple, what I'm advising, and I would advise again and again and again, especially to check out my later videos on doing this together with the family, learning how to pray the offices and why you would want to do that liturgical life as a family. I want to suggest that you simply begin by praying the Psalms, and especially if regular prayer like that, sort of a rhythmic, regular prayer, and ordered prayer life is something that's kind of new to you, it's kind of novel for you, I want to recommend you do that. There's a couple of reasons I would recommend you do that, but one of the most important is that the Psalms, again, are the prayer of the entirety of the people of God, right? The Jews use these in their liturgical life. Jesus prayed these. Our Lady prayed them. All of the saints have known and prayed and shared these words. Of course, in many other languages, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, and English, and any other language that they've been translated into. But we have this gift of the Psalter, and it really shapes and forms and encapsulates an incredible human relationship of us as God's people, and these experiences we have in relating them to God. Even if you don't feel the feeling of that psalm that day, you get yourself, and it'll give yourself a context where you have felt that, or somebody. It's amazing. Even when there's like an imprecatory psalm or some other psalm that you read that's assigned for the psalm for that day, it might not be what you are feeling, but it's less important. What you realize that your feelings matter, but there's a context from to fit them in, and that's what this liturgical prayer really does. It helps you understand that there's a context for everything. Our faith has a context. These sacred words, if you sing them especially, but these sacred words will saturate into our consciousness, and they'll bring us deeper and deeper and deeper into this, really those magical recesses of our minds where in times that are like most opportune, the words will spring to our lips, right? So if for no other reason, and I would always give other reasons, I advise singing the Psalms precisely because it helps those words become more memorable, right? We've all got jingles that get stuck in our head. There's been songs that from your childhood that you're like, I kind of wish that I didn't know that song because it won't leave me alone. Those things are real, but really that's the power of song, helping our brain remember. So the tones, another point 2, if you want to give it that. I'm not even who's counting. Point 2 for why this is a great book is the tones are not actually that difficult or complicated. Of course, for those of us who aren't trained to be lay choristers singing in King's College in England or whatever, there's a little bit of a learning curve. And I was planning on recording just how to sing a couple of these days, and then I stumbled onto another group that has beat me to it and it did a better job than I would have done. And I'll post a link to the incredible playlist that they have singing through every single one of the Psalms in this Psalter. It's an incredible resource to listen to, have a reference as you're wanting to make sure, did I sing that right? Do I understand the notation better? So that's all you gotta do is read along and you'll figure it out. It's really not hard. And if you have questions, feel free to ask me. I'm happy to help with that too. Finally, I really just want to highlight why this book matters and why the philosophy of singing and beauty and holiness, they go hand in hand for building a sacramental imagination, a strong, a vibrant domestic church, and in turn will build stronger local churches, stronger national churches, stronger Catholic Church, right? It's going to build a stronger world. In the editor's preface, they offer really their defense for one, why they wrote this book, and two, why they chose St. Dunstan to be the patron of their book. So I'm not going to read the entirety. If you get the book, and maybe even online in the samples, you can see that it's just 2 pages, which is basically their preface here. On the last comment, on the last paragraph, big paragraph they say, with due reverence, we place this Psalter under the heavenly patronage of St. Dunstan, Archbishop of Canterbury, who died 19 May 988. Dunstan, a major figure in the development of English Christianity, is revered by Eastern Orthodox, Roman Catholics, and Anglicans alike. Of course, Dunstan is an obvious patron. He is well known for his considerable musical abilities, well-versed in chant and hymnody, as well as in the manufacture of church bells and organs. However, I'm going to come back to this, however, in a time of great social, moral, and spiritual decline, St. Dunstan arose as a restorer of the spiritual life, especially the monastic way of life in England, a life centered on the chanting of the Holy Psalmody, hymnody, and prayers of the Divine Office. Dunstan encouraged the integration of this monastic way into the everyday life of the laity. His reforms restored not only the monasteries, but also the general piety of the entire English nation. Although he was an advisor to kings and nobles, the humble man found no greater joy than instructing the youth in theology and chant in his cathedral school. Notice the part, as I said, they said, however, in a time of great social, moral, and spiritual decline, Dunstan arose as a restorer of the spiritual life. I mean, obviously ours is an age of social upheaval. Ours is a time with many battles fought, right? And wars waiting yet to be waged. And yet, as Christians, there's always a returning and rest. As pilgrims, we're not home in the land where we make our home, but we do what we can to plant the flag of God's holy kingdom of heaven here where we have been planted. Just as St. Benedict reflected on the family and forming his rule for monks, we can learn a lot through going back and reflecting on the intentionality of the monastic way of life. And obviously we're not all called to a life of poverty, chastity, and obedience, but we are all called to offer up ourselves as a living sacrifice. I recommend this book as a great resource on living out that beautiful priestly call in the midst of our families, praying together that God's kingdom might come on earth as it is in heaven. So there's a couple of things that I'm happy to dive into in more detail. I'd love to share, how the structure of the book works, but I could not recommend it higher. It's a beautiful book. It's well done. It's incredibly accessible, and I'll have a later video on actually praying the morning offices and the small things you would want to do if you wanted to make this book match with either the North American or the Commonwealth editions of the Divine Office, the daily office for the Ordinariate form. Check out the links in the description below. Give me your comments. If this is valuable, I would love for you to subscribe, stick around for more. I'd love to be a part of the conversation, and pray that God blesses you.